Ben Jones, Deputy City Manager. I know all of you. I don't know why I even said that. Andrew Cheney, City Manager, can't be here today, so I get to moderate, which is mostly I get to carry the microphone to you afterwards, ask questions. And we have two presentations today. Grace is going to do both of them related to energy, and I just want to re-emphasize why these are important. So when we set these performance goals that we've all established throughout all of the departments, it's important to check in every so often and say, how are we doing? In these early stages, it's important for everybody to understand what the performance measure is. And Grace will explain what the performance measure is, why it's important, what we may have done in the past to help reach our goal and what we might do in the future. And then we're depending on all of you, and this is the second most important part, we're depending on all of you to kind of brainstorm, and if you have ideas for how we might accelerate our movement towards that ultimate goal, this would be a good time to offer that. So without further ado, I guess, do you have your microphone?
I'm going to be up here.
Okay. They said it was on. Thank you. Go ahead, Grace.
Hi, I'm Grace Kelly, Energy Management Coordinator in Public Works Engineering, and I'm going to talk about two performance measures that focus on energy. The first one is energy reduction. So as part of Council Priority 4, Sustainable Growth and Development, the performance measure is to achieve the Council adopted goal for 15% reduction in energy use in city buildings. So why does this matter? This matters economically, socially, and environmentally. We want to reduce utility costs. We would like to reduce the need to build another power plant. And then also environmentally, we want to reduce carbon emissions and pollution. We want to be good stewards of the environment and of taxpayer resources. So any money that we save on energy use can be used for other projects and programs. So this poster says the greenest watt is the one that doesn't have to be produced. Before we put solar panels on any facility, the best, cheapest, first thing to do is to reduce energy use. Oops. Oh, here we go. So Council adopted this goal in June of 2014, and we want to know, how are we doing? So we're looking at, this is just building energy use since 2014, and we're using about the same amount of energy for city buildings. It's just that we're powering more of them with renewable energy. So the orange shows how much renewable energy we're generating on site. A typical office use, the energy is used for air conditioning first and then lighting. So those are our two greatest impacts that we can have when we are changing out equipment in buildings. So once we looked at building energy use, we wanted to know, well, how are we doing in water treatment? How are we doing in traffic signals and street lights? And so we charted the whole city energy use in the last 3 years. And the total energy use has gone down 1%. So even though buildings have stayed about the same in 3 years, we have decreased energy use in water operations and in traffic signals and streetlights. So what is working well? The strategies that we've used are energy audits, energy retrofits, and outreach and education. So whenever facilities maintenance or parks or water utilities changes out lights, they replace them with LEDs. And when they change out motors, they use more efficient pump motors. So about 5 years ago, we did a citywide energy audit and retrofit and changed out air conditioning and lighting in 20 buildings. And at that time, we added an energy management system so that in the evening hours when the offices are closed, the air conditioning shuts off. Since that time, we've been taking individual buildings and hiring an energy consultant to come in and look at the whole building and give us advice on how to reduce energy use. So this is the Kiwanis Recreation Center. A consultant came in and they recommended new LED lighting in the gym and the pool. and also new pump motors for the pool. So with all the changes, when it was all changed out about a year ago, it reduced the energy use in the building by 20%. And then we added solar carports, and then we reduced the need for utility power an additional 30%. So here's the City Hall parking garage. The metal halide lighting was switched out to LEDs, and it reduced the energy use by 50% in the City Hall garage. Transportation is changing out 4,000 streetlights from high-pressure sodium to LEDs, and that project will go on for the next 3 years. Also in parks, each year, there's a number of parks that are being replaced, that the lighting is being replaced to LEDs. One of our strategies is also education and outreach. So we have an online tool, it's a virtual office, and if you go on tempe.gov/energy, you can find the virtual office and you can click on the computer or the shredder or the refrigerator. You can take the thermostat and move it up and down, and you can see how that impacts the energy use and the energy bill for that month. We also had an employee energy challenge where we had 10 buildings that were in a competition, and over 3 months we measured the energy use as compared to the year before, and whoever reduced the most amount of energy, we threw them a pizza party. We also had an individual building energy challenge that was a 5-question survey, and you could win prizes, and we had about 25% participation. So the primary goal here is just to learn about how to reduce energy use. So going forward, some of our challenges are that in the first 3 years, our goal is 15%, and in 3 years, we've only reduced energy use by 1%. So that is one of our challenges. And then also, the cost to put in the newest, best technology is sometimes cost prohibitive, but the good news is that the technology is all evolving very quickly and costs are coming down. One of the opportunities we have is that the Office of Sustainability is working on a climate action plan over the next 2 years, and there will be lots of opportunity there to develop strategies to reduce energy use even further. So in closing, the first best thing to do is to reduce energy use, and then going forward, the very next best thing to do is to put solar panels or renewable energy on facilities, and we'll talk about that in the next presentation. So if you have any questions.
Who has a question? Very good, Grace. Is this working? Who has a question for Grace? Questions?
Grace, what's been the feedback regarding the changes of the lights in the parks? Because LED looks different than the traditional.
Yeah, it's been mixed. We have had some complaints initially when the park lighting was changed out, and Parks has been great about working with the residents to make sure that anybody that is that close, if the light's shining in on their window, they'll either put up shields, or we've also learned a lot in the last several years. We used to put in 5,000 and 6,000 Kelvin LED lighting, and it's a very bright bluish white. And so now the city's mostly, for streets, we're putting in 3,000 Kelvin, so it's more of a warmer lighting. And then in parks, depending on where it is, they can put in 3,000 or 4,000 Kelvin lighting.
Have you examined or overlaid the increased percentage in the temperature in Tempe to give kind of a different kind of explanation with all the efforts that you've undertaken? To show only a 1% savings, is there some explanation related to an increased temperature in Tempe and why you wouldn't achieve a higher percentage?
Weather definitely has a big impact on energy use. So in the hotter summers, we're going to see our energy use is higher, and if we have a summer that has a lot of rain, then it might not be as high. So it is a concern, and Hopefully, as part of the climate action plan, we're looking at ways to reduce that future heat impact and also to plan for how, work with utilities and plan for how to deal with those hotter summers that we have ahead.
And the other question that I have is with the, you commented about that HVAC and some other systems will turn off or change significantly after the workday. What are the measures for those of us that are in a 24/7 emergency-driven kind of business where if I come in at 10 o'clock at night and it's really hot in my office, it would be, while environmentally appropriate, it may not decrease my heat rage or the other difficulties in a 24/7 operation.
We did have that concern when we did the energy performance contract about 5 years ago. The police courts building was one of the buildings where it was kind of divided into zones. And I think initially there were certain areas that were shut off at night that it wasn't working. And so courts and police let us know that, hey, we're here Sunday nights 5 to midnight and we can't have no air conditioning. So we went back with our energy management system and programmed it, but we could probably do a better job of letting people know which areas are being cooled and which areas are shut off in the summer months from April to October, so that they know. And if they need to make changes, we're always willing to make that change so that they do have cooling when they're there.
So Grace, clearly we're measuring progress toward this goal based on metered electrical use. We do a lot of things as a city behaviorally that reduce energy consumption that's not necessarily reflected in metered electrical usage. The example at the top of my head is we implement water conservation programs. We use less water. There's less water being pumped through the CAP canal, which is a reduction in energy consumption. While we don't meter that directly for ourselves, it results in a reduction in cost of our CAP water because that energy cost is lower because we're using less water. Yet it's a little harder to account for that kind of electrical consumption, but it seems like we should be getting credit for those things that may result in a reduction in energy consumption but are not specifically measurable at the electrical meter. Any thoughts on that?
It's true, and probably one of the things we could do is work together and point out, here's the things that water is doing and do a better job of broadcasting that so that we know how you're able to maintain the same or lower electricity use over 3 years, even though your demand may have gone up. You may be serving more customers today than you were 3 years ago, yet we saw on the chart that your electricity use has actually gone down.
Hi, Grace. I have 2 questions for you. One question is, how often is the city performing energy audits? And the second question is, has the city considered any other alternative renewable energies other than solar?
Great questions. So, Alex, the first one, we do energy audits about once every 2 years. So for the CIP, in 1 year, we'll do an energy audit and look at all of the things that can be replaced in a building or 2 buildings. And then in the next fiscal year, we'll use the CIP budget to use those funds to replace equipment for that building. As far as renewables, and I'll talk a lot more about it in the next presentation, but we actually have a little bit of hydropower in our portfolio, thanks to the Hoover Dam allocation, where now we get Hoover Power. And we are also in a collaborative effort with the Shrog cities and Amoresco on a digester gas project out at the 91st Avenue and Buckeye facility. So once that biogas is reused, that'll be another renewable energy kind kind of project that we can credit toward our goal. We haven't really looked at wind. Don would like us to look more at geothermal as an option. And so we'll continue to work on those different renewables so that we have more of a portfolio than just solar.
Hey, Grace, between the comments that Sylvia made and David, I think one of the things this points out is some way to normalize the way we measure our energy reduction through some of these issues that they brought up. So I think we'll have to look at that too. Whether it's the weather or more customer, whatever it is, there's a way to normalize that to probably give it a more accurate measurement.
Should we go right into number 2, which is closely related? Great. Go ahead.
Thanks. Oh. So our next energy performance measure is about renewable energy. And as part of the Council Priority Number 4, Sustainable Growth and Development, this measure is to provide 20% of city operations power from renewable energy sources. So why does this matter? We have the same triple bottom line approach as in energy reduction. This matters socially, environmentally, economically. A lot of all of our buildings are powered mostly from coal, natural gas, and nuclear power. These are limited resources, and eventually they will run out. They also have pollution impacts and health impacts. So we need to transition from fossil fuels over to renewable energy to conserve our natural resources and to be good stewards of the environment. So most importantly, we need to use renewable energy to leave available and sustainable energy for our grandchildren and their grandchildren. So this slide says we're halfway to goal, and we will be as soon as the JGM water treatment plant solar project comes online. So we have 6 city sites, 4 megawatts of solar power installed. And we, at the end of fiscal year 17, we had 6% of facilities powered by renewable energy. And hopefully by the end of this fiscal year, we'll have 10%. So what is working well? When we first started out about 4 years ago, we had utility incentives. We had cheap, affordable financing. Our solar provider was able to get the federal tax credit, which in turn gave us lower costs. And we had lots of high energy sites and also lots of land. So we did all the easy stuff first. So I'm just gonna go through 3 of our sites to show 3 of our 6 sites. The first one is the South Water Treatment Plant. It's almost a megawatt, and it provides 15% of the South Water Treatment Plant's power needs. This is the Library and History Museum, and it's an 800 kilowatt project. It provides 35% of the complex's power needs and lots of shaded parking. And this is the Police Courts building, and the solar panels here provide about 12% of the complex's needs. So this is a dashboard showing the Kiwanis Recreation Center after the solar carports were installed. This is an August weekday, so it's a weekday in August, and the pink area shows you all the energy consumption at the Kiwanis Rec Center, and the green bars show the solar panels, the solar energy production. So you can see that from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., the facility is powered 100% by renewable energy. So we have dashboards for each one of the sites, and we can see on a day, a month, or a year-long basis how we're doing with solar production. So some of the challenges going forward are that we built a lot of the projects with the best return on investment. So it's getting more difficult to build these projects. Also, our solar provider has changed strategy and policy, and they are only doing projects that are over 1 megawatt with battery. So it limits us on the available sites to install solar in. And then for regulations, there's utility regulations that say that you have to build your solar project on the same site and the same meter as a building that has that energy use. So you have to actually match your meter and your load, and you can only put it within that site. And then also costs. Although costs of panels are coming down, it's still difficult to get the best ROI on the smaller projects. So it's really been the economies of scale that have helped us in the past. This is a solar roadmap showing the bright green sites are all the ones that we have already installed solar on. So we got to 10% installing the first 7 or 8 projects. And then going forward, the next 7 would get us to 15%. Well, the one largest project is the South Water Treatment Plant on the reservoir roofs. And the roof is scheduled to be replaced 5 years out. So we're looking at 5 years out, we could get to 15%. But even if we do all of that, it's getting more and more difficult to get to 20%. So we need to look at other options and look at what other ways we can use to get to the 20%. So some of our strategies, the first one is we're looking to partner with APS and SRP to develop a utility scale solar project. So both of the utilities have available land and have expressed interest in working with us. And if they have a 32-acre parcel of land and we put a solar array on it, that would power about 1,000 homes. So there is an option to do utility scale, and then also we're collaborating with ASU and other cities to develop a joint solar project. And we're going to add solar panels to Fire Station 7, and any new buildings that come in, we will also add solar panels to new city facilities. So in closing, that's our renewable energy update, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So let me kick this. Is this on? Let me kick this off, because Grace won't be surprised that I'm asking this question, because I asked it the other day. And one of the things we're trying to do in here is to try to perfect our goals. What is it? Is what we're stating as our goal a good goal? Is that something we should do? And based on the comments that we heard on the last question, on the last presentation, let me ask this question. So if you had a goal of certain percentage of your energy use being renewable energy, whether that be 40% or 50% or some good number, and one of your strategies to get there was to install more alternative uses or alternative sources of energy. And another strategy is to reduce the amount of energy you purchase from an electrical utility. Wouldn't that just be a strategy? Why do we have 2 goals? Why wouldn't we just have this goal, with the understanding then that if we add a new police station and a fire station, we're not moving further from our goal, as long as those police and fire station have renewable energy at least the rate that we had prior to that. And if the temperature goes up, we didn't fail to meet our goal or move farther away from our goal, because we will use equal amounts of renewable and non-renewable energy, and they will both go up or down. So why would we have both of these goals? Why isn't the first goal of reducing our energy purchases, why isn't that just a strategy to get us to our goal of consumable or of renewable energy?
Excellent question. I agree. I think that 3 years ago, when these 2 goals were adopted by council, I think at the time the thought was, well, we want to tackle both. We want to reduce energy and we want to provide sustainable energy. But I think as we are getting more renewables into our portfolio, the other one, the reduction, doesn't really make as much sense. And then once we start on the climate action plan, we're going to look at reducing the city's emissions overall. So we may even change the language again from reducing energy to reducing emissions. So I think it is kind of a goal, a performance measure that is probably, that has a few days left, or that we could, if we could change. Yeah.
I like this goal, and I'm not trying to hog the conversation, but if this were your only goal, one of your strategies would obviously be to buy less energy from the energy companies. That would just be one of your, and just reduce your energy usage in general. It seems like common sense strategy there. So other questions about the renewable energy and production? Or you can go back to the first one if you have a question about that.
Thanks, Grace. So this relates a little bit to the question that was asked before and your answer, and this idea of are we measuring our net effect, or are we measuring our consumption? I'll specifically refer to what you were talking about with 91st Avenue. So biogas is another way to meet a renewable energy goal. What we found through the Walton study several years ago and so forth is that up till now, producing biogas through anaerobic digestion and using it in Arizona, using it in Tempe, is not a really viable venture from a financial standpoint because energy is so cheap in Arizona. However, what we're seeing now through the Amoresco project in 91st Avenue, we're being approached by anaerobic digestion energy speculators, and there's this trend toward capturing organics, turning it to gas, and shipping that gas to California, where the markets are going out of the roof because of organics, diversion mandates, energy prices, landfill costs, renewable identification number value, and so forth. So what I ask is this: if we can produce, or if we can contribute feedstock, or in some way contribute to the production of renewable energy that is then used somewhere else, should that be applied as a credit to this goal that we're trying to achieve? We are, through our behavior and through our actions and through our programs like the Tempe Grease Co-op, achieving or contributing to an overall global reduction in non-renewable energy consumption, but we're not consuming renewable energy right here in Tempe. It seems like that global net balance should be what we're trying to achieve, not just how much of our light switches in Tempe are going on and off using solar or renewable, but what's the net global effect that we're having through all our programs. If we look at it that way, then our projects at 91st Avenue and additional projects that might emerge that would result in renewable energy consumption somewhere as a result of us could be credited toward that goal and that balance. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. You're right. I think there is a better accounting system that we don't quite have yet to really account for our buildings, and then looking at the bigger picture overall in the city, and how do we show that we're producing energy that can be used, that biogas that can be used by other places. How do we, what kind of accounting system can we use to kind of tell that good message to all of our residents and to other cities as well? So I think that's part of the work of Office of Sustainability in the next few years is kind of how are we going to not only reduce overall emissions, but how do we produce renewables that can contribute and that we provide energy to other places as well.
Grace had a question. Are we storing any energy or selling any energy back? Do we actually sell it back and then or sell it and then buy it back? Is that how we're doing, or is it going directly to?
Times, if going back to that chart for Kiwanis Rec Center, SRP in 15-minute intervals, there are times where we produce more power than we use. And in that case, we do get credits. The credit is wholesale credit, so it's, if we're paying 4 cents to SRP or actually if we're paying retail price 7 cents to SRP, they're giving us credit at like 3 cents per kilowatt hour. So there are points where there's times of the day, depending on what month and what site, what facility. For example, South Water Treatment Plant, that facility consumes every bit of solar energy, so it doesn't overproduce, but some of our sites like Kiwanis, it does overproduce, so we get some credit for that. And then I'm not quite sure how our 91st Avenue and Buckeye project is going to work, how the credits there work out.
You get a
But-
proportional payment for the sale of biogas to State of California.
Okay. So we're getting credit for the Schrag partnership, and then also a pretty small amount, but we do overproduce at some places.
Hi, Grace. I have one, going back to the previous comment of better capturing the energy reduction, has it looked into also how recycling program influences energy savings as well? Obviously producing a new can versus a new can from recyclable material, there's a savings there. Has that also been considered as part of the account of Tempe's contribution towards reducing energy as a global scale?
You know, we don't count that as part of our energy savings. And another area that is not in this formula is transportation. So all the city fleet vehicles and city garbage trucks, all of that, you know, ultimately we would like to have a goal that looks at not only reducing our energy use in buildings and streetlights and traffic signals, but also to include our fuel, which is half of our energy use. So if we could just really start focusing on that, and that could be, if there's a performance measure that were to replace that first energy reduction, or maybe even the renewable energy performance measure is redefined to really encompass transportation and all those other uses that the city accounts for.
It's a great question. So when Grace and I are working on so we've done a greenhouse gas inventory community-wide, and now Grace and I are working on our municipal greenhouse gas inventory. When you do a greenhouse gas inventory, there are 3 scopes. So your first scope is what you use in buildings and what you use in transportation. Your second scope is what is used through any other relationship you have with your utility providers, both gas and electricity. Then the third scope is any emissions you have through anything that you buy. So I was at a 6-hour training yesterday about cities that are starting to do accounting practices around their entire supply chains and taking full accountability for scope 3 emissions. But right now the commitment that we're under a 3-year commitment as part of the Global Covenant for Climate and Energy. And so through that commitment, what we've agreed to do is to do a community-wide inventory, set a target for reduction, and then create a plan to reduce. But that's only for scopes 1 and 2. There are very progressive, forward-thinking cities that are setting scope 3, and it's called a consumption-based greenhouse gas inventory, and then you set consumption-based goals. That's gonna be down the line. So we've got to get the community-based one done. We need a municipal one done. And once we start to see some major progress, then we can start to think about what a scope 3 inventory would look like and what action around scope 3 is. There needs to be a lot of political and resident support to start to really move down in that direction. And we have to sort of get these first plans and inventories done. But you're definitely seeing the path of how this works.
I'll just add that I think that's how these performance measures are created. We go to the city council with ideas of things that help meet their priorities that they've established, and if reducing greenhouse emissions meets their priorities and we set a goal around that, then they will approve it. And if, in this case, we're talking about our consumption of electricity in the city of Tempe, and the city council has clearly said we want that to be more sustainable. We want to have more of that come from a renewable source, and so we set a goal around that, and the city council agreed. So I think all of these ideas that are being brought up could result down the road in creating future performance measures that the city council would say, yes, that also helps us create a sustainable community. So this could all evolve, and it should.
Grace, on one of your slides was an APS SRP solar farm. If I understood correctly, you said that was something that we could consider as a city. Why would we not consider that? What are the pros and cons of investing into the solar farm with APS and SRP?
A great question. It just depends on where council really sees, if their priority is to put solar panels on facilities where every resident can actually see the panels, then it would be kind of a direction to continue to solarize the city. But if people are okay with the fact that it's a solar array, but it's 100 miles away, and we're not getting the energy directly from the solar array. We're buying credits, so we're buying renewable energy credits, and so I guess it's the philosophy of how how we move forward, and there's actually a council working group right now that's looking at this and looking at in the future, do they want to increase the renewable energy target? Are they interested in doing utility scale solar? And the utilities are definitely interested in it because for them, they're able to monitor it and regulate it. They like the large, efficient solar fields because you can build a lot in one area, and if it's near a transmission line, it's even better. So this is the type of solar facilities that the utilities really like. So I think all the pros are that we are very interested and we do want to do this. We just have a lot of, I guess, education and outreach to bring everyone along to decide if they feel that this is the best way to move forward. You take it. All right.
Utilities.
No, that's right. Nevada actually reached 100% renewable energy goal for all their city operations. I'm sorry, Las Vegas, Nevada, reached 100% of their city operations in renewable energy. And the way they were able to do that is that they partnered with the utility, and the utility built them a 100 megawatt solar field out in the desert that is not directly powering their facilities, but it's a renewable energy credit situation. Well, the city pays about a 0.5-cent premium for this power, so it's a really good deal. And our utilities, so far, I mean, we're looking at they're saying about a 3-cent premium plus a service charge. So we have a lot of work to do to kind of bring them down in cost and to get something that is more reasonable and that we can all agree on.
Okay, so I have to say that I really appreciate your style and the visuals supported by your verbal presentation. It's obvious that you're really good at speaking to us non-specialists, so you made it super easy, and I really want to give you kudos for that. As a director who really grapples with the performance measures, I think, every day, one of the things that we talk about is, are there performance measures that are in conflict with others? And what I mean is, as an example, and really reflecting, I'm not a specialist in this, I wonder, how does our tree canopy measurement somehow conflict with or comport with the renewable energy, like solar? If we enhance our tree canopy to the degree that our council wants our tree canopy grown, would it conflict with this measure? And have you identified, and I think this is this gap kind of space for us, do we have any performance measures, for instance, in police, that would conflict with some other performance measure? And I think your space is really interesting in identifying those that conflict. Have you identified any or explored that space at all?
We haven't. This whole process has been evolving, and I think that would be something that we would look at, because you're absolutely right in in the library parking lot where the superstructure was built, several trees did come out so that those solar panels could go in, not just on the north side of the library, but on the south side of the library as well. And we can plant some bushes and shrubs, but it's difficult to plant trees right next to the solar panels because you want the greatest amount of production that you can get. So it's a very good point that as we move forward, we need to kind of compare and see how they do kind of work against each other and what plan we can make moving forward to make sure that we're working together. For example, Bonnie's part of the tree canopy performance measure. We can work with her and see if there's a way to plan out in the future, where are her trees, where are the major areas where she's planting them, and then how do we work together to make sure we're not.
Chief, if I could just address that briefly. So I think you've hit on something that the Strategic Management Office knows really well, which is there's going to be a balance of achieving some of the performance measures and not others. But also when we look at it in the way that you're implying, it requires us to look more closely and say maybe that's not a good performance measure. So I'm going to go back to my example. If we're building a fire station because we have a performance measure that says our response time should be this, we need another fire station to do that, and we look and say, oh, adding a fire station is going to mean more electricity, it's going to completely contradict this. I think then you would look back and say, oh, it's not the amount of electricity we use, it's the percentage of electricity that's renewable versus non-renewable energy. Then you would say you can build your fire station to improve your response times as long as you put those elements in there of some percentage of renewable energy so that you're not deviating from this goal. And I think it helps us to look at those. When you look at one in the context of another, it helps you realize whether or not your goal is a good one, or if it's contradictory, or if it's just has an unintended consequence when you try to achieve that goal. So those are really good points, and I know Strategic Management and Diversity looks at this all of the time.
Just to add to that, it also can influence what your strategy is. So if we know tree canopy is important and we know cooling through vegetation is important, that's another reason for us to do solar outside of city limits where it doesn't affect that performance measure. So there are times when another performance measure may not influence that you invest in it, but it may influence how you invest in it.
I just want to say thank you, Chief, for that question, because I think it leads to the purpose of why we're here today. The whole idea of why Tempe Accelerates was created is we all spend a lot of time talking about what our goals are, performance measures, but we don't get a lot of chances to talk with one another in the different departments, break down the silos and talk about what are you trying to accomplish. That has been a resounding conversation every time we discuss and plan these meetings. So I thank you for bringing up that question, and it provokes thought for all of us to go back to our departments and think about get to know what your performance measures are in your department, really, right? But also think about how do we help our colleagues advance theirs? And are we creating anything that is a barrier to them advancing theirs? The whole idea of this is Grace has done a great job, and there is a lot of work that goes into this. So I really applaud Grace and the other two presenters that we had last week, because this isn't an easy thing to do. But I also thank you for being involved, because employees want to get more involved and understand what is this idea of strategic management and data. And the whole idea of why we're here is collaboration and supporting one another with this huge endeavor and trying to really create a world-class city. And it might be in our own discipline, whether it's building inspections or traffic, and I see everyone from different departments, but it's really helping, how do we help Grace in her endeavor? So I really appreciate that question, but also thinking about what Sylvia just said, is there anything that we're doing that might be a contradiction in helping a peer advance their performance measure? And a plug, Strategic Management 101. Those of you who are attending here, you probably want to attend that and encourage your employees to attend, because it helps them get a little more engaged in what's going on in the rest of the organization.
Thank you. Other questions for Grace?
Is this on? Okay, there we go. You piqued my interest. I know you tried to brush over this, but you said something about Don's idea of geothermal. I got to hear what that is, because I mean,
Oh,
You want to know what geothermal is?
we're going to harvest geothermal energy here.
so difficult to retrofit a building. I think if we had a pilot project where we could build maybe a new facility with geothermal. And the other thing is it really works well in the colder climates. Like they have a lot of it in Colorado and Wyoming. I'm not sure. I do know of some places here in the valley where, very few though, when I've been to geothermal kind of a day conference that was put on the former governor's office of energy policy, they had a conference about geothermal, and there are vendors that are interested in doing projects for cities, but it's just such a field that doesn't have a lot of exposure yet here. And I don't know, Braden, if you have anything to add about geothermal as.
He's just looking for tips for his Unabomber cabin up in Colorado, looking for heating that thing.
Because I have my home was 100% off the grid.
Home here or your home in Colorado? Yeah. It's a real piece of crap.
It's all solar,
It's all solar?
but it's also only 20 by 8.
It's a Unabomber cabin, believe me. Other questions?
Thanks, Grace, for this presentation. I know you and I just recently discussed, we have the biomedical campus, of which we're having the developers put solar panels on the parking structure. And you mentioned the rate of return on it, and I'm sitting here thinking, and this inspired me to have a thought to maybe contribute to ideas, but is there a way to work with the utility companies if it's not really a small project, it's a large project, but if we offer different developers and in the aggregate, start tallying them up for credits that might be worth more than individual credits, because they are going to be doing a huge investment by putting them in individually, but if the rate of return isn't there, but maybe it would be considered by the utility company if Tempe companies did X, then they could get Y for credits. It might be more worth their while to invest in it.
That's a great idea. I think the first step would be we could meet with the utilities and the developer and see. There was APS is doing a residential project where they're putting solar panels on residential roofs, and APS owns the power, but the homes have the panels on the roof, and they were looking at possibly doing a commercial style project like that. So I think there's a lot of options. The other thing is that the utilities are finding that they have commercial businesses, corporations like Amazon, Google, IKEA, Whole Foods, and they have sustainability goals. So they have renewable energy goals, and they're asking APS and SRP to allow them to put large solar arrays on their facilities as well. So the utilities are listening to all of their customers that are saying, hey, we want this, we want to have it on our facilities so that our customers can see that we're sustainable. And I think that is something that APS and SRP is trying to figure out how to balance moving forward and how to accommodate that interest from their commercial customer. So we could meet with that company. You said what, biomedical? And then that would look so great. That would be a parking garage just west of TCA. Be a great spot for solar panels. That's the spot we were looking at. Yeah, that's great.
Well, let's thank Grace. This was a great presentation. Very good. And let's thank the Diversity and Strategic Management Office. This is a great concept to get everybody together to actually accelerate, move these programs forward. And Stephanie back here has been very helpful in this process. She gathers all the data. And so I would encourage you, like Rosa said, to reach out to your colleagues. And if you have ideas, feel free to contact Grace directly if you have other ideas for her, and contact the Strategic Management and Diversity Office if you have ideas to improve this process of review or any of the performance measures that are introduced. So thank you. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, there's a survey attached to whatever you got handed in the back. Please complete the survey so that we can improve this process. Great. Thank you.